Are you ready for the word?
Yes, sir.
Turn to Genesis 12. Now, before I read Genesis 12, I want to re-emphasize to us as a group how valuable the information is contained in those first 11 chapters. From Genesis 1:1 to Genesis 11:32, it covers a span of 2006 years. We know that, I think it's in Genesis 5 that we're given the numbers, and if you add it up, we know that the flood came when the earth was 1,656 years old. We know that Noah was 600 years old when the flood came. We know that he lived another 350 years beyond the flood. So if the flood came in the year 1656 and you add 350 to it, we see that Noah died in 2006. Not in the year 2006 of our made-up fake calendar that we use, but in Yahweh's calendar, counting from Genesis 1:1 to the day Noah died, it would have been the year 2006. So 2006 years is covered in those first 11 chapters. We know that Abraham was born 58 years before Noah died. So the earth was 1,948 years old when Abraham was born. So Abraham was born in 1948. Not 1948 in our fake calendar, but in Yahweh's calendar. He was born in 1948. So again, those first 11 chapters contain amazing information about the first 2,000 years of Earth's existence. So because it's covering so much information in just 11 chapters, a lot of the language is coded. And a lot of the language is abbreviated. And if you don't spend some time thinking about what it says, breaking down what it says, examining what it says, meditating on what it says, asking the Ruach HaKodesh to help you understand what it says, you'll miss a lot of what it says. Because it's covering a lot of ground and a lot of time in just 11 chapters. We're about to move into chapter 12. From Genesis 12:1 to Matthew 1:1, do you know how much time is covered in those? From Genesis 12 to Matthew 1, you know how much time is covered? Where we begin to talk about Abraham to Matthew 1 covers 2,000 years. All right? So the next 2,000 years are going to be covered in 39 books of the Bible, less 11 chapters. And it's going to be covered in 918 chapters. So there are 39 books and 929 chapters in all of the Old Testament. 11 chapters cover the first 2,000 years. I want you to look at that. That much. In my Bible, we're talking about 5 pages. Covers the first 2,000 years. So you know it's been compacted, right? I mean, it had to be compacted into those 11 chapters. Now, the next 2,000 years is covered in that much of our Bible. So what does that tell you about the importance of those next 2,000 years? That much is written about these next 2,000 years. It should tell us a lot. Because Yahweh could have spent the whole 929 chapters of the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament. Yahweh could have spent the whole 929 chapters expounding upon how awesome His creation of the universe was, and He could have spent that whole 929 chapters and barely scratched the surface about how awesome that He is and how awesome what He did is. But He didn't. Instead, what He did is compacted the first 2,000 years into 11 chapters just so He could get to the birth of a man named Abram. Everything, He's brought us quickly, I guess is the way I want to say it. Quickly, He brought us from, in the beginning, Yahweh said. He brought us quickly from that day to Abraham was 75 years old. He brought us to that point in 11 chapters. Because now, everything else that we read is going to refer back to the day that Yahweh made a covenant with a man named Abram. It must be very important, don't you think? Let me quickly give you a glimpse of what I'm trying to say. Galatians 3:16 says this. Now to Abram and his seed were the promises made. He said not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to your seed, which is the Messiah. Yahweh said to Abraham and his seed were the promises made, and Galatians 3:16 is saying that seed was a reference to the Messiah. So Yahweh enters into a covenant in Genesis 12 with a series of promises that carries all the way over into Genesis 17. He enters into a covenant, and then He starts making promises and promises and promises, and they carry all the way into chapter 17. And Paul's pointing out that what Yahweh was doing was promising to Abraham a Messiah that would come into the earth from his loins that would redeem mankind. See, those first 2,000 years are compacted with stories of wickedness that is beyond our comprehension of how wicked it was. Yahweh is going to deliver mankind from that. And wherever there's a need for Yahweh, there's need of a man. And He found a man in Abram. And He entered into a covenant with him. And the next 918 chapters of the Old Testament are going to be stories of how all hell was unleashed against that man and his seed to try to prevent that covenant from being fulfilled. And the next 918 chapters are filled with stories of miracle after miracle after miracle, and boldness and courage and faith of those who were a part of that seed, walking in obedience to Yahweh to see to it that that Messiah that was promised in Genesis came to pass. Wow. Stories of miracles all the way from Genesis 12:1. Genesis 12:1 says, now Yahweh had said unto Abraham. From that point all the way to Matthew 1:1, where these are the words we read, these are the generations of Yeshua, the son of David, the son of Abraham. That's the way the Gospels began. The son of David, the son of Abraham. Genesis 12:1 sets that in motion. Matthew 1:1 says it has come to pass. So we need to understand how important those first 11 chapters are, but we need to understand the vital importance of this covenant that Yahweh made with a man named Abraham. Do you see? Do you understand that beginning in Genesis 12 is the story of how Yahweh chose a man, chose a family, and chose a nation through which he could get his son to us that he might save us. Salvation is delivered to us through that line. Well, I hope we see it. Let's start now reading Genesis 12. I didn't want us just to start without understanding the gravity and importance and beauty and power of what we are about to read. Genesis 12:1, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Now Yahweh had said unto Abram, Get thee out of your country and from your kindred and from your father's house unto a land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you. And make your name great. And you shall be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless you. And curse them that curse you. And in you shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abraham departed, as Yahweh had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. So again, if you're just interested in the math, and somehow or another it intrigues me, Abraham was born in 1948. You add 75 to that, that means that we're talking about the year 2023. And Noah would have died 17 years before the incident we're reading about here in Genesis 12. Now, go back and look at these first 4 verses and pay attention to what we're told in verse 1. It says, Yahweh had said. It does not say, and Yahweh said to Abram. It says that Yahweh had said. Now, we know that when Abraham departed, he was 75 years old, but we don't know how old he was when he was told to depart. Paying attention? Past tense. Yahweh had said it to him, past tense, before Abraham ever obeyed. He had said in verse 1, here's what he said. Get out of your country. Get from your kindred, get from your father's house, and go to a land that I'll show you. Well, his country was the land of Nimrod, Ur of the Chaldeans, or Ur of Chaldees. His kindred were all pagans. His father was a high-ranking official in Nimrod's cabinet who was in charge of creating and maintaining in a temple all of the different idols that represented all of the different gods that Nimrod demanded be worshipped. His father was in charge of that. Abram's dad was a high-ranking official in that cabinet. So, notice that Yahweh had not said. He had not said, Abraham, I want you to be an evangelist to Nimrod and let's see if we can change Babylon. He said the same thing to Abram that he says to us, come out of Babylon, my people. Come ye out of her. That's the same thing he said to Abram. He did not say, boy, if we could reach Nimrod, we could change the world. Won't you go in and evangelize him and be a witness to him and see if you can reach him? That's not what he said. He said, get out. But by the wording in Genesis 12, we know Abraham delayed. He did not do what he was told. How long did he delay? 6 months, 6 years, 16 years, 20 years? I don't know. But I do know that it was past tense when Yahweh told him, get out. Perhaps that Abram delayed, perhaps he delayed because he thought he could change his dad's heart and his kindred's heart, his kinfolk. I'm not ready to get out yet because I think I can help my dad. He knows better. He knows Noah. He's just been blinded by the money he can make. I can help him see what I see and know what I know. Perhaps that's what he thought. And so he's trying to help his dad. That's why chapter 11 tells us that he and his dad left Ur of the Chaldees for the land that Yahweh wanted to show him. But in chapter 11, we find out they ended up staying in Haran. And how long did they stay there? They stayed there till Terah, or Abraham's dad, died. So, Abram has heard what Yahweh said, but something is keeping him from doing what Yahweh said. Was it a sense of loyalty to his dad? Was it a sense of spiritual responsibility to try to reach others? I don't know what it was, but something has caused him to delay. Now here's the point I want us to understand. That by delaying, what Abraham was doing was delaying the release of the promises that Yahweh had made to him. Those promises couldn't come to pass until he obeyed. Now here's a point I want you to really pay attention to. He accomplished nothing noteworthy in his life in those first 74 years because he never obeyed. Now, how do I know that he didn't accomplish anything noteworthy in those first few years, or first 74, 75 years? If you go read the book of Jasher, he did some amazing things that are recorded in the book of Jasher. Some powerful things, bold, courageous, faith-filled things that are recorded in the book of Jasher. But Yahweh does not start recording anything about that man's life until he obeyed him. The only thing Yahweh cared about from Abraham was Abraham saying, yes, sir. All of those great things that the book of Jasher said he did can be recorded somewhere else. They're not going to be recorded in Torah. The things he did that are recorded in Torah are recorded after he obeyed. How often do we do the same exact thing? We know Yahweh tells us to get out of Babylon, but somehow we reason in our hearts and in our minds that it would be best if we tried to evangelize our friends, our parents, our children, our cousins, our kindred. Sometimes people feel obligated to evangelize their pastor, who's in that Babylonian system. They're Nimrod, preaching a false religion. And because evangelism is the goal, people think they're doing some great thing, and yet Yahweh doesn't get excited about it at all. We go back to the quote of Yeshua, who said to the Pharisees, you'll encompass the whole earth to make one proselyte if we only reach one. And he said, you're making him twofold more the child of hell than you yourself. You're wasting your time. Yahweh isn't excited about all that stuff we do. What he gets excited about is when we obey. And when he says get out, he means get out. Come out from among them and be ye separate, says Yahweh. Now notice what else Yahweh had said to Abraham. And remember now, this is past tense. Yahweh had said to him to come out, get out from your land, get out from your father, get out from your kindred. That's all past tense. And then he says, and. So the getting out precedes the and. These things aren't going to happen until you do what I tell you to do. Notice what Yahweh said. And I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you. And make your name great. And you shall be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless you. And curse him that curses you. And in you shall all families of the earth be blessed. Notice how many ands there are in those promises and blessings. Yahweh said, get out of your country. Then he started with the promises that would come if Abraham was obedient. And those promises are one and after another. And. Every but that we give to Yahweh cancels out a whole string of ands of promises and blessings he wants to get to us. Yahweh says, I want you to do this, and we say, okay, but, and that but prevents us from experiencing the blessings that are attached to the command that he just gave us. With his commands, he lists blessings that are on top of blessings. And. Well, what we're reading in Genesis 12 is Abraham had heard the command, but he didn't obey till he was 75. Now, once he obeyed, Yahweh is going to unleash those blessings. So let's read on and see what happens. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. Do you see any problem in verse 5? Go back to verse 1 and 2 and tell me if there's a problem in verse 5.
Told him to get away from us.
Told him to get away from his who? His kindred. Is Lot his kindred?
Yes.
We're not going to deal with it a lot today, but I do want to point it out that Abraham had left his father and he had left his country. He's gone from his country and his father's house to go into the land that Yahweh would show him, but by taking Lot with him, he had not fully obeyed. Well, surely it'd be okay for him to take his nephew. And surely Abraham must have felt some sense of responsibility to his brother's son, his brother who was dead. Surely he felt some sense of responsibility to this boy. But the fullness of the blessing of Yahweh will not come into Abraham's life until he fully obeys by separating from Lot. Let me show you this. Quickly, I can show you this. Look in Genesis 13. 13:14. Yahweh said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which you see, to thee will I give it, and to your seed forever. Right there it is, plain as day. After that Lot was separated from him, Yahweh said, lift up your eyes now. Now I can walk you into the fullness of what I promised you some time back. Wow. This promise did not come until Abraham had fully obeyed what Yahweh told him to do. But he did obey by leaving his country and his father's house. And by doing that, it did begin the flow of some of the promises being made to Abraham and some of the blessings coming into his life. So let's read about some of that, or let's continue to read. Verse 6. Abram passed through the land unto the place of Shechem, unto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. So he is in the land Yahweh wanted him to go into. And Yahweh appeared unto Abram and said, Unto your seed will I give this land. And there built he an altar unto Yahweh, who appeared unto him. And he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west, and Hai on the east. And there he built an altar unto Yahweh, and called upon the name of Yahweh. All of this happened after he had obeyed. Yahweh appearing to him, Yahweh promising him land, him being able to call upon the name of Yahweh. All of that happened after he had obeyed. The point being that we should not think it would be any different for us. We can confess, we can profess, we can name it, we can claim it, we can do all of that stuff, but every blessing that Yahweh has and every promise that Yahweh gives, they are always conditional. You can't just name them and claim them, confess them and get them, profess them to be, and they come to pass. They are always released only to those who are obedient to the command attached to them. There's always an if. If you will obey me. See? Always. You can't just con Yahweh out of them. And what Yahweh's not mocked. Right? You can't con him out of them by confessing a bunch of stuff. He said, okay, you want that blessing, that's fine. If you do this, it will come. You know, last week we mentioned Elijah, or Elijah, going to the widow of Zarephath because Yahweh had told him that there was a widow woman there to sustain him. And I told that story last week from the viewpoint of Elijah. And what he must have had to fight in his own mind when he arrived in that city and saw this widow woman. Poor widow woman who had not even enough to take care of herself. How in the world was she going to take care of him? So you know there had to be a mental struggle that took place when he came upon that situation. So I told it from his viewpoint. But when Yeshua told this story, he told the story from the viewpoint of the widow. And I think rightly so. Because if you listen carefully to what Yahweh had said to Elijah, if you listen carefully to what he said, it's very important to consider that woman's viewpoint in this thing. Because here's what Yahweh said. He said to the prophet, go to Zarephath, for there I have commanded a widow woman to sustain you. So Yahweh is saying something to the prophet, but this widow woman is not going to first hear about this from the words of the prophet. Yahweh had personally already spoken to that widow woman and said to her, I'm sending you a prophet and I want you to sustain him. He had told her something to do. And what do you think she must have thought? Come on, let's just spend a little time tonight and imagine. if there's a famine in the land, food is scarce, and Yahweh says to her, and she knew that she heard from him, that Yahweh said to her, I'm sending a prophet to you that I want you to take care of. What do you think she thought? I personally don't think she thought, well, there's no way I can do it. I personally think she thought, well, he must be fixing to rain down some blessings on me. Boy, he's going to give me a bunch of stuff. There's going to be stuff coming in from the right hand and from the left hand. And when that prophet gets here, I'll be well taken care of so I can take care of the prophet. But by the time the prophet got there, I don't know how long it had been since Yahweh had said that to her. But by the time the prophet got there, she was down to her last little bit. It had gotten worse day after day after day after day since she had heard Yahweh say that to her. It had not got better. That's not good English. It had not got better. Y'all understand it. It had gotten worse day after day, right? So now she's looking at what she has and she's thinking, there's no way. And the day that she arrives where there's only a day's worth left, the prophet showed up. At what had to appear to her to be the worst possible moment in time that he could have shown up. Come on. Yahweh's awesome, isn't he? I mean, if he'd have come 3 months ago, it wouldn't have been any problem to obey. If he'd have come 6 months ago, it would have been easy to obey. But he's come at the worst possible moment. And now she's expected to obey. And the prophet, seeing the situation and discerning the situation, even though he's heard from Yahweh, he's timid too. Come on, he's just as real as we are. He sees this woman and he knows what Yahweh has said, and he knows that this is the woman that Yahweh spoke to, and yet he's timid and he says to her, woman, she's out to gather 2 sticks. He says to her, woman, fetch me something to drink. Fetch is not something you'd want to say to a woman in nowadays, right? He didn't mean anything disrespectful by it. We'd say, would you please get me something to drink? And she said, whew, yeah, I can do that. But as she's going to get the water, he knows he hadn't obeyed. And so he calls out to her and he says to her, bring me a morsel of bread in your hand when you return. He's still a little timid. Morsel means a tiny little bit. Just break me off a tiny little bit. And she stops and turns around and says back to him, sir, I don't have a loaf of bread at my home that I can break you off a tiny little bit. I came out here to gather 2 sticks. Not a bundle, 2. Because what I've got left, I don't need a big fire to cook it. Just a little fire will do. I've got a tiny handful of meal left in the barrel. And a tiny little bit of oil left in the cruse. And I am going to build a little fire, and I'm going to bake what little bit I have up, and my son and I are going to eat it and then die because there's nothing left. His timidity is holding up their blessing. Her reluctance is holding up their blessing. Yahweh's made a promise that He intends, let me say it this way. Yahweh gave a command that He intends to empower them to make sure it can come to pass. But his timidity and her reluctance are holding that blessing back. Both have been told exactly what to do. And like so many of us, they thought the blessing would come before the act of obedience. If Yahweh told me to do this, then He's going to give me what I need to do it before I have to do it. No. Most of the time, He wants you to do it before He gives you what you need to get it done. Let me remind you of what I said last week. What were the words I heard in Holly Pond? Say again.
Proceed as though you have it.
Proceed as though you have everything you need. I was waiting for the resources to come, and Yahweh said, no. Proceed as though you have everything you need. I got up that morning and started, and now 19 years later, we're still proceeding. The resources have never run out. We cannot think the blessing will come before the obedience. The obedience has to come before the blessing. Wow. She said, as surely as Yahweh lives, I don't have a loaf of bread to get a morsel from. I have a handful of meal in a barrel, tiny bit of oil. I'm going to cook that, we're going to die. He's timid, she's reluctant, she's resistant. They're both holding up the blessing. Both have been told exactly what to do. Thankfully, Elijah realized what was going on, and he knew that he had heard from Yahweh. Just as surely as Yahweh had said to Abraham, get thee out of thy country, just as surely as Yahweh had said to Abraham, Yahweh had said to Elijah, I have commanded a widow woman to sustain you. Remembering what Yahweh had said, boldness rose up in that prophet, and he said to that woman, fear not. And there's the key, isn't it? Fear is what holds us back. Fear not. You go do what I said. No, actually he said, you go do as you have said. Go do it. But woman, our blessing is dependent upon this. You go do what you said you was going to do, but you make sure you bring me a morsel first. All of this depends on us both being obedient. Bring me a piece first. This thing's not going to work unless we both obey. And then he said, then go make for you and your son. And he said, for thus says Yahweh. Wow. Go read the story tonight. It'll fire you up. Because this is the way it always works. It never changes. This is the way it always works. He said, you bring me one first, then you go make for you and your son. For thus saith Yahweh. see more revelation and more information begin to come as soon as he took the first step of obedience. He didn't have those words to say beforehand. But now that he's obeyed, Yahweh can start talking to him again. You see, when Yahweh tells you to do something and you don't do it and you're thinking, well, I wish he'd talk to me. I need him to talk to me. Well, he's not going to talk to you till you do the first thing he told you to do. Right. And so they both act, and now a word comes from Yahweh. And Elijah transfers that to that woman. He says, woman, thus saith Yahweh, that barrel of meal is not going to run out, and that cruse of oil will not fail until the day that rain comes down out of heaven. I don't know how long that's going to be. I don't care. But I promise you there's going to be enough for you, your son, and me until there's another means. Wow. It's the same principle at work with Abraham as it was with Elijah. That's the reason I want to tell that story. That's the reason the Bible talks about statutes. You ever notice that Yahweh will tell us to obey His commandments and His statutes? A statute is a principle. It's not necessarily a command, it's a principle. And the statute at work here is blessings follow obedience. Not the other way around. Well, if He blesses me, I'll obey. No. Obey and He can bless you. That's a statute. We see it in Abraham's life in Genesis 12. We see it in Elijah's life. That's in 1 Kings. That's a statute. And what was good for Abraham and good for Elijah is good for us. It's a statute. The blessing will follow the obedience. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. As His name is put upon you, so shall He Himself bless you.